Have you ever looked in the mirror, noticed your hair becoming thinner, and wondered if there was something simple you could do to slow it down? If you're over the age of 60, you've probably seen countless videos claiming that one inexpensive combination sitting in your kitchen can bring your hair back to life. Garlic and olive oil are often described as a natural remedy that can wake up sleeping hair follicles, stop hair loss, and even restore thick, healthy hair. It certainly sounds appealing. After all, these are ingredients that have been trusted in homes around the world for generations. They are affordable, familiar, and easy to find. And when you're watching more hair collect in your brush or noticing more of your scalp in the mirror, it's understandable to hope that something so simple might offer an answer. But here's the question very few people ask. Can garlic and olive oil actually regrow hair after 60, or has the story become much bigger than the science behind it? What makes this question so important isn't that scientists found a miracle hiding in your kitchen. It's that their research paints a far more balanced picture than the dramatic headlines most people ever hear, and understanding that difference could save you from unrealistic expectations and unnecessary mistakes. In the next few minutes, we'll explore 7 important questions every senior should know before trying this popular home remedy. Why does hair change so much after 60? What makes garlic so different from other natural ingredients? What can olive oil actually do for your hair? What have scientific studies really found? Who might benefit the most? What common mistake could irritate the scalp instead of helping it? And finally, what results are actually realistic? Before we answer any of those questions, here's one reassuring thought to keep in mind. Seeing changes in your hair doesn't automatically mean you've done something wrong. For most older adults, these changes are simply part of the aging process, not a personal failure or a sign that you've neglected your health. Hair doesn't simply disappear overnight. Instead, small changes often develop so gradually that many people don't notice them until one day the mirror seems to tell a different story. Have you ever wondered why that happens even when your daily routine hasn't changed very much? The answer begins beneath the surface of the scalp. As the years pass, the body goes through countless natural changes, and the scalp is no exception. The tiny structures responsible for producing each strand of hair don't always work the same way they did decades earlier. The growth cycle becomes less efficient, and new strands may not replace older ones with the same consistency as before. That doesn't mean every older adult experiences severe hair loss. In fact, the amount of change varies greatly from one person to another, which is one reason home remedies can seem to produce very different experiences. For women, these changes often become more noticeable after menopause, when shifts in hormone levels can influence the normal hair growth cycle. For men, age-related thinning frequently follows a different pattern, developing gradually over many years. Although those patterns are different, they often lead to the same feeling. Many seniors aren't simply trying to grow more hair. They're trying to hold on to a familiar part of themselves. That's exactly why natural remedies continue to attract so much attention. They offer something many people are searching for even more than thicker hair. They offer hope. But hope becomes truly valuable only when it's guided by reliable information. So before deciding whether garlic and olive oil deserve their reputation, it helps to remember one simple idea. The goal isn't to find a miracle. The goal is to understand what these ingredients may realistically be able to do, and just as importantly, what they cannot. That distinction begins with the biology of the scalp, because the reason garlic became one of the world's most talked about hair remedies starts far deeper than the hair you can actually see. Here's something that surprises many people. Researchers didn't become interested in garlic because they first proved it could regrow hair. They became interested because of what garlic might be doing to the scalp itself. That may sound like a small difference. In reality, it's one of the biggest reasons so many online videos misunderstand the science. If you only remember one idea from this chapter, let it be this: a healthier scalp and new hair growth are related, but they are not the same thing. So why does the scalp matter so much in the first place? Because every strand of hair begins below the surface, in a tiny structure that spends its entire life responding to the environment around it. Scientists have learned that when they want to understand changes in hair, they often begin by studying the scalp rather than the hair people see in the mirror. That's an important shift in perspective. Instead of asking, how do we make hair look thicker? Researchers ask, what kind of environment surrounds healthy hair? That question eventually led them to garlic. Not because it was a popular home remedy, but because it contains several naturally occurring compounds that scientists believed were worth investigating. In other words, the research didn't begin with a promise. It began with curiosity. One compound attracted more attention than almost any other. It's called allicin. If you've ever crushed a fresh clove of garlic and noticed its sharp smell almost immediately, you've already encountered it. That familiar scent is one reason scientists became interested in garlic in the laboratory. Here's where the story becomes more interesting. Researchers found that allicin has antimicrobial properties, meaning it can help fight certain bacteria and fungi under specific conditions. They also studied its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory activity. So what does that actually mean for someone looking in the mirror and worrying about thinning hair? It doesn't mean garlic suddenly tells hair to grow. Instead, it suggests that garlic contains compounds capable of supporting a healthier scalp environment, something scientists consider worth studying because healthy hair depends on healthy skin before it ever becomes visible above the surface. Notice how different that is from many claims you hear online. A compound with interesting biological properties is not the same thing as a proven hair growth treatment. That distinction changes everything. Many videos skip directly from garlic contains allicin to garlic regrows hair. But science doesn't make that jump. It asks another question first. Can those biological properties actually produce meaningful results in real people? That's exactly why laboratory findings are only the beginning of the story, not the ending. And perhaps that's the most valuable lesson so far. When you hear that an ingredient has antioxidant or anti-inflammatory properties, it's perfectly reasonable to be interested. But it's equally important to ask whether those properties have been shown to produce the outcome people are hoping for. Those are two very different questions. Learning to separate them can help you avoid chasing exaggerated promises while still appreciating what researchers have genuinely discovered. Garlic earned scientific attention because it showed potential, not because it had already proven it could reverse age-related hair loss. That distinction is easy to miss, yet it changes the entire conversation. And as researchers continued exploring natural ingredients, they found another household staple that attracted attention for a completely different reason. Unlike garlic, its reputation wasn't built around compounds like allicin. It was built around something else entirely, and understanding that difference is the key to understanding why olive oil became part of this conversation in the first place. Olive oil entered the conversation from a very different direction. Unlike garlic, researchers weren't primarily interested in whether olive oil contained compounds that might influence the scalp's biological environment. Instead, much of the attention focused on how olive oil interacts with the hair and the surface of the scalp. That difference is easy to overlook, but it helps explain why these two ingredients are often mentioned together, even though they are not believed to work in the same way. Olive oil has been used for centuries in personal care, long before modern shampoos and conditioners became common. Today, scientists know that it naturally contains substances such as vitamin E, polyphenols, oleic acid, and squalene, components that have attracted attention because of the way they help condition and protect hair. Here's the important part. Healthy-looking hair and newly growing hair are not always the same thing. A strand of hair that feels softer, appears shinier, and breaks less easily may look fuller, even though the number of hair follicles has not changed at all. That distinction explains why some people genuinely feel their hair has improved after using olive oil. In many cases, what they're noticing is an improvement in the quality of the hair they already have, not necessarily the growth of brand new hair. And for many older adults, that can still be meaningful. As hair ages, it often becomes drier and more fragile. Natural oils produced by the scalp gradually decrease, making individual strands more vulnerable to breakage during brushing, washing, or everyday styling. If those strands break less often, hair may appear healthier over time simply because more of each strand remains intact. That's a very different process from stimulating new hair growth. But it's also a benefit that shouldn't be overlooked. This brings us to one of the most common misunderstandings surrounding garlic and olive oil. Because each ingredient has different properties, many people assume combining them automatically creates a stronger treatment. It sounds logical, but science doesn't work by adding two popular ingredients together and assuming their effects multiply. Each claim still needs evidence. And that's exactly where many online discussions begin to drift away from what research has actually shown. So what happens when we stop looking at theories and start looking at real studies involving people? The answer is both encouraging and surprisingly cautious. Researchers have explored garlic in clinical settings, but the strongest human evidence often mentioned online comes from a very specific situation. It involved people with alopecia areata, an autoimmune condition that causes patchy hair loss. Even more importantly, garlic was not used by itself. It was studied alongside a standard medical treatment rather than as a replacement for one. That detail is frequently left out of viral videos. It's also one of the biggest reasons we cannot automatically apply those findings to the kind of gradual hair thinning many adults experience after 60. Age-related thinning and alopecia areata are not the same condition, which means results from one cannot simply be assumed to apply to the other. At the same time, there is currently no strong clinical evidence showing that a mixture of garlic and olive oil can reverse typical age-related hair thinning in older adults. That doesn't mean the combination has no value. It means the scientific evidence has not yet reached the point where such a conclusion can honestly be made. For many people, that answer may feel less exciting than the promises found online. But in reality, it's far more useful. Knowing where the evidence is strong and where it is still limited allows you to make informed decisions instead of relying on hope alone. And once we understand those limits, another practical question naturally follows. If garlic and olive oil are not miracle cures, is there anyone who might still benefit from using them as part of a sensible hair care routine? So, who might actually benefit from garlic and olive oil? The surprising answer is that the people most likely to notice a difference are often not the ones hoping for dramatic hair regrowth. Instead, they're usually the ones trying to care for the hair and scalp they still have. That may not sound as exciting as a miracle cure, but it's far more consistent with what today's evidence suggests. The real question isn't, can this bring back all my hair? It's, what problem am I actually trying to solve? That simple shift in thinking changes everything. For example, someone whose scalp feels dry may appreciate the moisturizing qualities associated with olive oil. A person whose hair has become increasingly brittle with age may notice that it feels softer, is easier to manage, and breaks less often with consistent conditioning. Those changes may seem modest, yet for many older adults, they can make everyday hair care noticeably easier and help the hair maintain a healthier appearance over time. This is why realistic expectations matter. When a remedy is judged only by whether it performs a miracle, it's easy to overlook the smaller benefits it may genuinely provide. That brings us to another part of the story that deserves just as much attention. Sometimes the greatest value of a natural remedy has less to do with what you add and more to do with what you avoid. One of the most common examples involves fresh garlic. Many people assume that if garlic contains beneficial compounds, applying raw garlic directly to the scalp must produce the strongest effect. It's an understandable assumption. But here's the question many people never ask. How does the scalp actually respond to concentrated raw garlic? For some people, the answer isn't comfort. It's irritation. Fresh garlic contains highly active compounds that can be harsh on the skin. Some individuals develop redness. Others experience burning, stinging, or even blistering after direct application. Instead of supporting a healthier scalp environment, the skin may become inflamed. Ironically, the very ingredient someone hoped would help can end up placing additional stress on the tissue they were trying to care for. That's why trying a small patch test before broader use is considered such a sensible precaution. Skin becomes more variable with age, and two people can respond very differently to exactly the same ingredient. Application time is another area where misunderstandings often arise. It's easy to assume that leaving a remedy on longer should produce a stronger result. Current evidence doesn't support that idea. If irritation begins, extending the application time is unlikely to improve the outcome because the issue is no longer the ingredient itself, it's the skin's response to it. Olive oil calls for the same balanced perspective. It is generally well tolerated by many people, but using large amounts may leave the hair feeling heavy or greasy, particularly if the scalp already produces enough natural oil. In that situation, the experience becomes less about effectiveness and more about finding an amount that suits your own hair and scalp. Stepping back from all the claims online, one message becomes remarkably clear. An ingredient doesn't become valuable simply because it's natural. And it doesn't lose value simply because it isn't a miracle. The most reliable approach is to look at the evidence, understand both the strengths and the limitations, and recognize that different people may experience different results. Viewed through that lens, garlic and olive oil begin to make much more sense. Their potential role isn't to reverse decades of age-related hair changes overnight. It's to serve as supportive tools that may help some people care for their hair and scalp in realistic, evidence-informed ways. And once those expectations are grounded in what research actually shows, we're finally ready to answer the most important question of all. After everything we've explored, one conclusion rises above all the others. The biggest discovery isn't hidden inside a clove of garlic or a bottle of olive oil. It's the difference between believing a claim and understanding the evidence behind it. Once you understand that difference, you begin looking at every health promise a little differently. And that's a valuable habit that extends far beyond hair care. When we put all the pieces together, a much clearer picture begins to emerge. Garlic attracted scientific attention because researchers found biologically interesting compounds worth studying. Olive oil earned its reputation because of the way it helps care for hair and support its condition. Together, they represent something far more realistic than the dramatic stories often shared online. They remind us that meaningful improvements don't always come from extraordinary promises. Sometimes they come from understanding what an ingredient is actually capable of and appreciating those benefits for what they truly are. For many older adults, that's a far more satisfying way to approach healthy aging. Instead of constantly searching for the next miracle, the focus shifts toward making informed, balanced decisions that can be maintained over time. If you're thinking about trying garlic or olive oil yourself, keep these 5 ideas in mind. Start by asking a simple question. What type of hair change am I actually experiencing? Understanding the cause is often more valuable than choosing a remedy, because different kinds of hair loss do not always respond to the same approach. Next, if you decide to experiment with garlic, remember that the scalp deserves the same care as any other part of your skin. A small patch test before wider use can help you discover how your own skin responds. Now consider olive oil from a different perspective. Rather than expecting it to stimulate new hair growth, think of it as a way to help condition and protect hair that has become drier and more fragile with age. One more thought is worth remembering. Natural remedies require patience, not because waiting somehow makes them work better, but because meaningful changes in hair condition take time to observe. Judging any approach after only a few days can easily lead to conclusions that don't reflect what is actually happening. Finally, pay attention to changes that don't fit the usual pattern. If hair loss becomes sudden, severe, rapidly worsens, or is accompanied by pain, scarring, or persistent scalp problems, those are situations where professional medical evaluation is far more valuable than continuing to experiment with home remedies. Perhaps that's the simplest lesson from today's discussion. The most helpful question isn't, is this natural remedy good or bad? It's, what does the evidence allow me to expect? That single question can protect you from disappointment, reduce unnecessary risks, and help you make more confident decisions, not only about your hair, but about your health in general. If today's conversation has helped you see this topic a little more clearly, then we've accomplished exactly what we hoped to do. Our goal has never been to replace hope with skepticism. It's to replace uncertainty with understanding. If you enjoy exploring health topics through balanced, evidence-based conversations designed specifically for adults over 60, we'd be honored to have you join us again. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss future discussions where we separate popular health claims from what current research actually shows. And if you know someone who's wondering whether garlic and olive oil really live up to their reputation, consider sharing this video with them. It may help them make a more informed decision before trying it themselves. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and remember, the best health decisions rarely begin with the loudest promise, they begin with the clearest understanding.